Welcome back. As Canadians head to the polls today, President Trump giving those angry over his 51st state rhetoric more reason for concern and possibly a little bit of anger. President, in what might be described as trolling, said Canada in a new social media post, if it joined the United States, would see, quote, zero tariffs or taxes. Canadians appear highly motivated in this election. Early voting broke records and long lines at polling places were reported today across the country. Joining us now for more on this election, Mercedes Stephenson, Ottawa Bureau Chief for Canada's Global News. Mercedes, always great to see you. When we spoke Friday, you were not really ready, according to the polls, to predict a winner. I've read a lot of things over the weekend saying that the Liberals, led by Mark Carney, are on the cusp of a victory, and they might even get a majority in Parliament. How do you read that analysis?
I think that it's accurate to say that's what the polls are showing us. The question will be whether or not that's how things show up tonight, although that particular Donald Trump social media posts that you just highlighted are likely to drive people into the Carney camp if they might have been going one way or the other. And by the way, Donald Trump has said that he actually prefers a liberal government, thinks they're easier to negotiate with. Pierre Poilievre, who is our conservative leader up here, kind of panicked when this tweet came out and immediately said President Trump needs to butt out of the Canadian election because some people thought it was a reference to Pierre Poilievre, so that could really hurt him in the polls, which is why you see him reacting. I think it's actually Donald Trump describing Donald Trump there, but it speaks to how much this election has really been about a leader who is not of our country and trying to decide who, in fact, should lead Canada. It's possible the Liberals get a majority tonight. It's possible they get a minority, which means the government is not as stable. That's the last one that they had. And then use the NDP, which is sort of the socialist party here, to back them up. And it's possible there's hidden conservative support like there was in the U.S. election. So a lot of people are really hedging their bets, but there's no question that the numbers that we can see that are publicly available are telling us that so far this looks like the Liberals to lose, but it is a tight race and anything could still happen.
And for those of us in America who are not familiar with the contours of Canadian elections of this kind, it feels to us very different, that there's so much more conversation. There's a kind of energy in this election, not previously visible in other recent Canadian elections. Would that be true?
Absolutely. It's being called the election of a lifetime, the election of a generation. I've covered a lot of elections in my time as a political reporter. I've never seen engagement like this. It goes to both what you were talking about in terms of the over 7 million people that voted in the advanced polls. That's a lot of people when you're talking about a population the size of Canada's, to just hearing Uber drivers or front desk staff at the hotel here talking about who they voted for. I haven't seen that in past elections. So there's really a level of engagement here and a question of who's best to lead. And that comes from two places. Part of it is frustration that Canadians are experiencing with a decreasing quality of life in some cases, and certainly an increasing cost of living for everyone, but also this existential threat that is perceived from Donald Trump. And I think a lot of Americans think Canadians assume that Donald Trump is joking. They don't. This is taken very seriously in Canada. I've never seen this kind of patriotism before. The closest we've come would have been during Afghanistan, when our soldiers would come home who had died on the battlefield, and we would line the highways with Canadian flags. Even that was not this level of an almost aggressive patriotism of a country that is worried that what has traditionally been our biggest ally and friend now may be looking to annex us against our will.
Mercedes, walk us through the night. How will the returns come in, and when we might hear from a at least presumed victor?
So it'll start coming in around 7:30 when the Atlantic polls close. Atlantic Canada has swung very liberal red in the past. It was looking like it was going to go conservative, but now there are questions that it looks like it could go back to a red wave. That's not what wins elections, though. In Canada, there's some key areas that determine who will win the election. They are largely around Quebec and Montreal, in Ontario around Toronto, where I am right now, and then in the lower mainland of British Columbia, so around Vancouver. Those are really the battlegrounds you've seen politicians going to over and over. If one of the parties is able to substantially take Ontario, that's usually when the vote is called. And if it is a landslide for the Liberals, we'll know that very early in the night. And if it's not, then we could be here very late, as there are a number of really close ridings that could affect which way this gets called.
Excellent. As always, Mercedes Stevens, I appreciate it very much. Thank you, and have a very good election night.
Thank you, Major.